Good evening. This is your Weekend Not TV News. I'm John Collins. 2 days since a terrible act of terrorism tore through Paris, killing more than 120 people, details are starting to emerge about those who died and about the murderers who took their lives. The Islamic State in Iraq and Syria has claimed responsibility for the attacks on bars, restaurants and stadiums, on carefree people simply enjoying a Friday night out. The French President François Hollande has called the atrocity an act of war. Now the mother of a Nottingham student who died fighting ISIS says government should have intervened against the group much sooner.
If governments had taken them seriously from the beginning, then perhaps we wouldn't have come to this state. But we sat back and watched, and we didn't mind. We were horrified. The people were horrified, but governments didn't act when they massacred the Yazidi people and enslaved their women. That just again, on the same day that the news broke about Paris, they discovered a mass grave where 80 young girls have been buried. Yazidi young girls have been buried by ISIS. Yeah, they've always been a threat, and they'll continue to be a threat. Until we take some sort of action against them.
As buildings across the world lit up in the colours of the French flag, people here in Nottinghamshire have been paying tribute in their own personal way. Mansfield Town players bowed their heads before their match against Northampton, while the Nottingham Arena fell silent to listen to the French national anthem before the Panthers game last night. Others took to the streets to light candles for the dead, to remember those lost in attacks that to many seem shockingly familiar to those when terrorists targeted the Parisian magazine Charlie Hebdo in January. This is a type of attack that Dr. Andrew Mumford, a terrorism expert from the University of Nottingham, says is becoming increasingly common.
Well, clearly what this attack demonstrates is that we are seeing a pattern now in terms of terrorist targeting that points towards what is known in security circles as marauding urban attacks. This, I think, is now the new reality. This is what terrorism in the West is perhaps going to look like more. It's going to look like a series of coordinated attacks that are going to be predominantly urban, and to use the phrase that security experts are using to describe them, they're going to be marauding.
A serious city centre assault has left a man in a critical condition in hospital. Police closed off Beck Street for several hours this morning while they investigated. The 22-year-old man was found injured there early this morning and taken to the Queen's Medical Centre. Another man's been arrested in connection with the attack, and detectives are now asking whether you saw anything suspicious in the area last night. If you did, they want you to contact them on 101. A Nottingham GP says he's worried that the rise in mobile and online dating apps could lead to a rise in unplanned pregnancies. Dr. Marcus Bignell says that more and more people are now using the apps, and that could put them at risk, not just of getting pregnant, but also of catching serious sexually transmitted diseases.
Keeping pace with this technology revolution is just so challenging and quite amazing, really. But clearly, when it comes to being able to just find a date and possibly have sex with someone that you've never met before in such a short time frame, creates lots of issues, and it creates issues about your sexual health, you know, issues about infection, because if you've got people that have never met before and they're just meeting for sex, then that really increases the risk of sexually transmitted infection. And we mean things like chlamydia, syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, you know, the kind of stuff you absolutely don't want to get, categorically. And also risks of unwanted pregnancy as well. So I think it's a bit scary, and people need to be careful, you know, really careful.
Some of the nation's top wordsmiths will be reading and rhyming for a room full of Notts poetry fans at the Nottingham Poetry Festival later this month. It's the first time the city's hosted the event, which will see 3 days of poetry at the Nottingham Arts Theatre. It's hoped the event could help secure Nottingham's bid to become a UNESCO City of Literature.
The Poetry Festival, we've got over 20 poets coming. I think it's probably up to 30 now. There's over 10 events, and there's lots of great people. There's lots of great local groups involved. Most poetry festivals are in rural environments, and yet a lot of poets nowadays are urban. So I think we should have more poetry festivals in urban settings. And being from Nottingham, I'm very keen to have a poetry festival in Nottingham. There's lots of great poets come from Nottingham. Byron, obviously. Silito also wrote poems, and of course there's a great writer of D.H. Lawrence. So we've got a tradition in Nottingham of poetry and literature, and I'm very keen that we get the City of Literature nomination, and we secure that. So I thought it was a good time for us to have a poetry festival.
Nottinghamshire came to a solemn standstill earlier this week to remember those who gave their lives for their country. And today it was the turn of locals in Mapley to pay their respects. 300 people paraded through the streets and paused for a moment of peace in front of the area's war memorial. Although Armistice days passed for this year, people attending today said it was still vitally important for them to remember the fallen.
People should care about remembering those that they, because in a sense, if they hadn't given their lives to free the world of tyranny and that, such as the Germans and that when they conquered, these people probably wouldn't be here today.
I am sure that this will go on for many years to come, and our brave people who fought for the freedoms for this country will never be forgotten.
Let's have a look now then at one of the stories that hit the headlines in Nottinghamshire this week. Now, you may well share your home with a furry friend or two, but one woman from Bulletin has thrown her doors open to unwanted guinea pigs and now lives with hundreds. She says she's overwhelmed by the numbers being abandoned and recently rescued dozens at an auction.
Shaz Kelly's Bulletin home doubles as a guinea pig rescue centre, which she shares with more than 300 of the animals. Notts TV visited the shelter this time last year, where Shaz told us she was finding it hard to take in all the neglected pets. Now she says the situation has got much worse, with many being abandoned at auctions.
And it's the fur and feather auction, and they take guinea pigs and rabbits down there, and it's more or less a dumping ground. It doesn't matter if they're sick, if there's something wrong with them, if they're all right, they're pregnant, and they're just put in the auction and auctioned off. There were 5 cages the other week left behind, and the auctioneer tapped the lady on the shoulder and said the guy's cleared off and left these 5 cages behind. She went and had a look and they were all babies, and she brought them back here, and most of them got rehomed, but there were a bunch of 4 or 5 little teddy type ones with no eyes or one eye.
Shaz says guinea pigs are being carelessly overbred and many end up advertised for free on the internet.
There's a lot of people that put them on Gumtree and Pre-Love that they don't realise that a lot of people do troll these websites for snake food or for breeding with, and they'll just put them up free to good home. Now if it's free to good home, we can help, we can take them in and we can find them a decent home.
It costs a lot of money to keep the centre going, so if you're thinking of getting a furry friend, Shaz is urging you to think of adopting a rescue pet.
So Shaz, these are 2 that are desperately in need of a home.
Yes, they are. They came from Melton last week. They're getting overlooked as usual because the boys, everybody wants to adopt the girls and nobody wants the boys, but they're a beautiful pair. He's about a year old and he's about 5-6 months old. So we're desperate for a home for them.
Why is it a problem with boys?
A lot of people think boys fight. They don't always fight, as you've seen in the shed. I think it's because they keep a lot of the girls back for breeding. So the boys are just passed on because they've got nowhere to go.
Shaz says it's difficult looking after the hundreds of pets during the winter months and is grateful for anyone who wants to offer a donation, as she expects an influx of more guinea pigs after Christmas. Sharon Wallier, Notts TV News.
Sport then, and Nottingham Panthers put 4 past Coventry Blaze last night to make it 4 wins in their last 4 home games. Nottingham netminder Mika Viekman faced 20 shots but kept all of them out, and that performance earned him the Man of the Match award. To football, where Mansfield Town made it 4 games without a goal yesterday as they slipped to defeat against promotion chasers Northampton Town. The Stags' fate was sealed after a 4th-minute header from Northampton forward Mark Richards. Mansfield now sits 6th in the League 2 table. Nottingham Rugby, meanwhile, staged a dramatic comeback against Cardiff Blues A in the British and Irish Cup. They were tryless and 17 points adrift at half-time, but the Green and Whites piled on the pressure in the second half, fighting their way back to a 20-all draw. Now for your weather, there's a chance of some rain tonight with fairly strong winds. There'll be highs of 14 degrees and lows of 12. Tomorrow's set to start bright with sunny intervals through most of the day, really. The rain will be back by tomorrow evening, though, and temperatures then will drop all the way down to 8 degrees. It's a similar story on Tuesday as well, when a dry start makes way for clouds and even some spells of heavier rain. Once again, there'll be some strong winds. Finally tonight, candles, music and quiet contemplation on the attacks in Paris brought Nottingham's Diwali celebrations to a close today. The festival is normally a bright and lively celebration with fire, drumming and colourful displays, but organisers of today's events at Nottingham's New Art Exchange said that simply didn't feel right and that they'd rather remember the people of Paris.
Considering the global conflict that we observe on the news a lot, particularly what happened on the Friday just gone in Paris, we thought that it would be nice to do something meditative and respectful for not just the people in Paris, but for the people worldwide who suffer from conflict, who are often innocent victims of somebody else's decisions. And if Diwali is a celebration of good over evil, then we need to present the best possible Diwali to really bring out the best in people and bring them together.
That's all your news for now. Good night.